there's all sorts of things in this mix that present very significant hazards. And then there's the biomechanical stresses and ergonomics of poor posture, long work hours, and then, of course, child labor and issues of the children not being able to be educated because of the starting in this hazardous work at a very young age. So we're caught with the really sympathy for this disappearing culture and a way of life, but on the other hand, we hope for something better for these people in terms of the occupations of their children to be safer. They make the point that they divert about 80% of the material that they collect from the landfill. And in the United States, we're about 50% on average. So I was, a number of years ago, wondering how we can do better than this. So I studied in the Netherlands, which is probably a country that's as advanced as you can be in terms of the waste collection. And of all the waste they generate, only 10%, less than 10% goes to landfill. And they've achieved this by very high-tech source separation. You heard about source separation. It's done at many different levels by the individuals, but then there's a second tier of waste separation done industrially with very sophisticated machinery. And this is done in a way that prevents some of the occupational hazards that you saw. Of course, the Netherlands is 1/4 the size of Iowa with 16.5 million people, so they haven't the luxury of landfill. And that's been the driver for this social policy change in the Netherlands. So I think the message I have is one of cradle-to-grave philosophy about raw materials. Garbage is a raw material, as was pointed out here, that has great value. We shouldn't be landfilling it. And there's this common pay-as-you-throw, where we need to think about how we deal with waste management as a commodity that needs to be taken care of and costs covered, and phasing out landfilling is going to be important. And I think that the point here was well made that some of the companies that were moving in to this in Cairo were not diverting any of this from the landfill, and that's clearly not a sustainable way to operate. So I'll pass it on. There you go.
Thank you. The success of public health in any given setting is inextricably linked to the spirit of the community. This is particularly true in those settings where there's little infrastructure and few resources to begin with. In these particular instances, the best solutions to the most daunting challenges often come from the people that live in these communities themselves. Take, for example, the Zabaleen. These are 60,000 people who are surrounded by poverty, are ignored by their neighbors, ignored by their government, and yet they have a tremendous pride and strength of community, and they look to themselves to find solutions to preserve their way of life. This spirit and this strength is embodied most in Layla. She is part social worker, part teacher, part public health nurse, part community advocate and activist. And she strives to organize and to educate the Zabaleen, particularly their children and the young adults. These educational efforts are kind of centered around the recycling school. And here the children learn how to read, they learn how to write, they learn how to use computers to manage a business, to sign contracts. And this is also where they learn about hygiene, safety, and health. This school affords them an opportunity that their parents and their grandparents never had. And with it, they learn to modernize their trade. So, in my opinion, the biggest lesson, and the lessons learned in these classrooms and the ideas that are generated by these community meetings offer the best solutions to the Zabaleen to preserve their way of life and to continue with it. Public health as a practice, and as shown in garbage streams, homegrown solutions and community support are vital for public health campaigns to make an impact and to enable change in their communities.
Thank you, Tara and Peter and Maggie. I guess I'd like to just open it up if folks have comments. I see a hand go up in the back.
One thing they didn't show us, it was alluded to, was this is a Christian group. They handle garbage. Muslims won't touch garbage. And if you remember when the swine flu broke out, Egypt slaughtered their whole swine herd. This community used pigs to basically recycle the food waste. So part of their recycling was using pigs. And so in Egypt, these are the untouchables. These are the people that you look down on. They're garbage handlers. And so it's very easy for the government, for the status quo, because it's all Muslim, to basically pull the rug out from under them, because they're the lowest of the low.
Thank you.
So that, and it really wasn't brought out in the film, but I should really notice that it was clearly a Christian church. The homes had crosses on the doors. They had a picture of a Madonna in the back of a shop, and it was very subtle, but in a little cultural background. I assume that's part of why this is all kind of coming down around their heads with very little support from the broader community.
Yeah, I guess I was reluctant to address this question because it's not public health related, but since someone seems to be knowledgeable about the community, I mean, besides being Coptic Christians, I mean, what language are they speaking? Are they speaking Arabic or are they speaking Coptic? I mean, I don't expect anybody to jump in right there, but the two things that struck me most, pardon? They are speaking Arabic. Okay, thank you very much. The two lines that really grabbed me were, the foreign companies will not rest until they have taken everything. And I think that's just as true of us here as it is them. You know, the forces of corporate domination are taking over all our lives. And in that sense, we're not that much different than they are. The other thing that really struck me was the person who said, garbage is a gift from God to be recycled and reused. And even the material in our community that is recycled, some of it is quite usable. And if you go down to the recycling center, it says, no material may be taken from this bin. And I, you know, am going there with my own set of standards saying, hey, I'm bringing this stuff to you. I'm giving you your material. And if there's a manila file folder that goes for at least 10 cents in the store, it can still be used. And now they've escalated it to the book bin that says, this is private property and it's illegal to take any of this. I mean, I work in the library and my job is to put things where they belong. You know, if somebody has put a current magazine in the trash or put the food waste in the recycle bin, it needs to go back where it goes, you know. And if there's, you know, I mean, obviously nobody needs a 10-year-old software manual. That can be shredded and recycled. But there's plenty of stuff. The words are still on the page. They're not gone. And they belong like in a used bookstore or the library's book exchange, magazine exchange, rather than, they're not ready to be pulped yet. So there's a lot of stuff that's in the category of being successfully recycled, and we think we're doing a good job, but it could be reused before it ever needs to be in the recycle bin.
The idea is that you put everything you can to reuse until there's nothing left, and then you take it to recycle where there's got to be a further energy input in order to recreate a good out of that raw material. And some countries have national swap days where people put stuff out and it's a big trade. Sometimes it includes an exchange of money, sometimes it doesn't. We have consignment stores, we have Craigslist, we have Free Cycle, we have some of these things, but I think there's a great potential to develop that further so that we can really reuse things until they really have no value other than raw material for recycling.
Any other comments or
There's no doubt that when there's a big flood, it brings stuff from upstream that you don't want, and it takes away stuff that some of which you do want, some of which you don't want. A lot of what is in the Gulf of Mexico and contributing to the dead zone there comes from agricultural states, including Iowa. Some of the nitrates and sediments that make the Mississippi.